Welcome to a new daily top Askreddit video. Today's topic: what's the most wholesome experience you've had with a stranger? I'm a wheelchair user. At a baseball game, a little girl came running up to me and climbed onto my lap. Her mom was apologetic, but I told her it was fine, no worries. Looking at the girl's face, I could tell she had some kind of developmental disability. Mom explained to me that the little girl's grandfather used a wheelchair and she missed him. I rolled around a little to give her a ride. She giggled and had a good time, then she climbed off and went back to her mom. Seems to me like her mom would also describe this as the most wholesome experience she's had with a stranger. 3. It's definitely the most wholesome thing I've read this week. I had a knock on my door, and when I opened it, there was a stranger with a gift card to a local garden store for me. Apparently her kid had been pinching tulips from my garden every day to give to his mom, and they wanted to pay for them once they figured out whose garden they were coming from. I had thought squirrels were doing it and had regretted planting them the year before, not being able to enjoy them. I'd spent the gift card on more bulbs. Or he was stealing them for his mom. That's kind of sweet. Yes, I wasn't mad at all. There was a little girl who lived a street away when I was growing up. I think she was around my sister's age. One day my mom spotted her watching her garden and complimented the tulips before riding off again on her bike. My mom went back inside for something, or maybe to a different part of the garden, but just for a moment. When she got back, she discovered the tulips were gone and spotted the little girl biking away really fast. My mom chased her down and the girl said she took them because they were pretty. My mom scolded her and said if she'd only asked, my mom would have been happy to cut some tulips for her. She didn't sweat it too much, because they were a poor family with many kids who all got into a lot of trouble around the neighborhood. They were just flowers after all. A few years later the girl was diagnosed with leukemia, and ended up dying. I think she was 11 or 12. My mom was so troubled by the death she got permission from the family to plant some tulips by her grave, so she'd always have the flowers she loved. Edit: y'all have been very generous with the awards and kind words. But I think I have enough now. Maybe you might give some to my mom down in the comments. I showed her this, she cried, or donate to St. Jude's or Ronald McDonald House. Or another charity that helps kids that you know and trust. But thank you all, however you choose to show your love. Damn it. A grown man crying in a pub in Duastia right now, because of you. Fuck. Don't know whether this is a good or bad story. Edit: I have recovered from my moment. Thank you for the awards. I just truly hope that humanity is moving in a more compassionate direction. If not, then bring in the meteor. I had just lost my job and my dad had his card stolen. He was waiting on the bank but completely out of food and living in an old, run-down RV. I would have figured something out. I'd die before I let him starve. Right as he's almost in tears talking to me about it, someone knocked on the door. A lady had food for someone in an RV, but those people had vacated the parking lot and she wanted to know if my dad needed some sort of local helping hands org. There was everything from canned goods, to fresh meat, milk, pasta. Everything. She had bought it with her own money and didn't want it to go to waste. I'll never forget the timing, or her generosity. A little bit, I hope / believe that she knew your dad was in need and was generous enough to offer this assistance in a way that seemed like happenstance rather than someone observing them struggling. Pride can be a bitch, and it's a delight to see when people go out of their way and get creative about generosity. As the recipient of generosity in the past, absolutely. You're already hurting, feeling like a failure, at least in my case, and needing the help of others just bites hard into you. But pride doesn't calm an angry stomach, keep you dry, or help you see the next day. Whenever I'm fortunate enough to be able to help someone, I try to offset that feeling by letting them know that I'm genuinely happy to be able to do for others what was done for me. I don't know if it helps, but I certainly try. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon just came out in theaters. I had been planning to go see it on my next day off. I didn't have a car, so relied on the bus. The day of the movie came and there was a snowstorm. I walked downtown to get the bus, but there was a sign saying all buses cancelled due to snow. I was super bummed out and walked over to the local coffee shop. I ordered a coffee and was telling the owner how disappointed I was that I couldn't get to the movies. There was an older woman sitting in the shop and she overheard us. She looked at me and said, "I really want to see that movie too. Let's go, I'll drive. So that the day me and a perfect stranger went out to lunch and to see a movie together. About a year later I started seeing this guy in town, and his downstairs neighbor was the lady who took me to the movies all those months earlier. We had stopped by her house for her to get a sweater before the movies. I told the guy me and your neighbor went to see Crouching Tiger together. He was like, that was you. She went on and on about how cool it was to go to the movies. Marry him, ask her to officiate the ceremony, and then sell those rights to Hallmark, Henny. Seriously, though, I love this story. Thanks for sharing it. On my honeymoon in Greece we nearly got stranded driving our little scooter back from a day trip. Finally found a petrol station in this village, but it was during afternoon nap / siesta time. We apologized as best we could in the little Greek we knew. The guy obliged but looked a little annoyed. He casually asks where we are from and we tell him New Zealand. His face lights up and is amazed because he had never met someone from NZ before. He asks us what are we doing so far away from home. We tell him that it's our honeymoon. He tells us to wait there and comes back with a bottle of wine that's obviously worth more than the €6 of petrol we are buying. He refuses for us to round up the bill or for us to buy anything. He just tells us honeymoon is honeymoon, be happy, go. Hands down one of the best highlights of our trip. I've never met more hospitable people than in Greece. I'd ask for directions, and people would invite me to their home and give me wine and olives while they were calling their English-speaking friend over from 2 villages down the road. Amazing people. I once got stranded in the middle of bumfuck nowhere in Germany when my car broke down. Several passers-by offered help, lodgings, tows, meals, etc. I was so unaccustomed to this behavior that I assumed everyone wanted to just murder me. When I was 16, I'd taken my mom's old Pontiac Boerville to the movies and I was in such a hurry that I forgot to turn off the lights. When I came out, the car was dead, but someone left a set of jumper cables on the hood with a note that said, "I hope you make it home safely." I've never ever forgotten about that. Since then I've tried to pay that kindness forward any way I can. Edit, thank all of you for the awards. I was about 20 mi from home and this was before cell phones were affordable, so that person saved me that night. For those asking, I'm assuming the person came out and saw my lights on and maybe even saw them running low / flickering and knew there was a possibility they would burn out before I made it back to my mom's car. Even if my battery hadn't died, it was a nice gesture. This is a lovely story, but holy shit, as soon as I saw jumper cables I was expecting the next line to be "and then my dad beat me with them." RIP, has that account made any posts in years? A few years ago, I was experiencing deep depression. My life was a mess, my apartment was a mess, I was a mess. For a moment, I decided to just go to the park and sit for a while, as I was really at the end of my rope and had zero idea on what to do. Out of nowhere, a kid, possibly about 3 or 4 years, comes and hands me 3 yellow dadelios and runs back to her mom. I don't know why, but I always remember that. That day, I went home and cleaned my apartment and made it more tidy. I wouldn't say that my life miraculously changed, but I will say that one moment of kindness, that neither the kid nor the mom probably remember, was one of the most memorable moments in my life. Edit, you guys realize you are making a grown-up ugly cry, right? I mean, that must be criminal. Thank you so much for your lovely comments and rewards. Or, I wonder if that kid does remember. When I look at it now from their perspective, I believe it was extremely insignificant. It was like that random nice thing that you do for someone without even thinking about it and moving on. I remember I had my head down, feeling hopeless. I felt a light tug on my arm and noticed 3 yellow dadelios being held by a tiny outstretched arm and a smiling face. I took them, thanked her, she ran to her mother's hand and they walked away like nothing important happened, but it did. There were so many other people at the park, but somehow the kid gave them to me. Because of that, I always make a point of showing kindness to people whenever I can. You never know what it means to someone. When I was 18 I had a friend in the hospital with brain cancer. His time was limited. I visited him when I could. He was kind of hippie alternative punk. I wore a leather jacket and had long hair. I walked to his room, a nurse saw me. Without saying a word she walked to me and gave me a long comforting hug. That's how I knew he passed. That's a very sweet and gentle way of telling someone about another person's passing. It was exactly what I needed. I guess this can be perceived as pathetic by some people, and that's okay, but I used to go to school with a bunch of horrible people. I'm disabled, so I look and walk weird. Every time I'd go out for lunch to my favorite food place and see them, they'd hurl insults. Anyway, I was standing in a long queue and they were behind me. There was an old lady, maybe like 70 to 80, behind them. They were making fun of my walk. I sorta can't walk straight, BC I had a stroke as a kid, and this old lady called them a bunch of cruel twats. It was really kind of her to stand up to them. I always will remember that. I'm a dwarf and I've had similar experiences. People can be so shitty. I actually just shared a similar anecdote on another thread where some teenagers started throwing empty food packaging at me. They had been filming me and I called them out for it, when this lady came charging to the rescue, yelled at them to leave me alone and bought me a coffee. When a complete stranger puts themselves on the line like that for you, it's amazing. It's a shame it has to happen at all, but the fact that some people step up, just reminds me that there's hope for humanity yet. I hope you won't take this question amiss, but is it usual to refer to little people as dwarfs? I hope you are feeling better nowadays and that you are surrounded by people who love and respect you.